but the numbers are starting to come out and more clearly from the State Department back to 2019, when we know the Palestinian Authority was spending $151 million a year on terrorists who were not killed during their terror attacks. That's part of the pay to slay program. Then there's a separate program, $191 million a year for terrorists who were killed during their attacks, and 500 people working inside the Palestinian Authority, inside their bureaucracy, just handling this program. So it's known to the world. It's not secret. It's in their law, established by their law. And finally, the U.S. in 2019 said no more, passed a law by Congress, bipartisan, Taylor Force Act, Palestinian Authority, so long as you're doing this, no direct funding at all. There may be some aid going to other groups, but not going to you as an entity. And they've been blocked. And now the Biden team
Kerry was right.
The Biden team
that was not a Freudian slip. That was probably an accurate assessment.
But the Biden team is looking at how they can get around this law.
Yeah. So I want to go to Than. I mean, the law was passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. It was an American that was killed by Palestinian terrorists, a student from Vanderbilt, actually. And it was a horrific scene. Unfortunately, it happens regularly, not as regularly as it used to, but it does happen, and it's a problem. But explain, I think it's important for people to understand exactly. So we got a call in or a question from Carrie on YouTube saying, can you please explain pay to slay and the law to combat it, which, of course, is the Taylor Force Act. Than?
Yeah, sure. So Jordan explained pay to slay very well. It's basically the Palestinian Authority paying terrorists for killing enemies in terrorist acts. But here's the bottom line, Jay. The short answer to the question of how the Biden State Department would get around this is they can't do it legally. And that's because of the Taylor Force Act, which started through the legislative process in 2017. It finished up in 2018, was signed into law by President Trump. And that statute specifically says that the State Department may not disperse these funds, Jay, unless, and here's why Secretary Pompeo's comments were so prescient on this, unless the Secretary of State is able to certify that those payments have stopped. So in order to comply with this law, if they want to, again, release these payments, Jay, Secretary Blinken would actually have to certify that the payments have stopped. But the numbers that Jordan just read, Jay, those were from 2019, after this law was put into effect. So clearly they are not complying. Clearly the Biden State Department cannot release these payments. I suspect they're going to try to do it in contravention of the law, Jay, and this goes back to the bipartisan support that the Taylor Force Act has. When that happens, here's what's going to need to happen in Washington, D.C. Democrats who supported this law, Jay, they're going to have to rise up and tell the president he's got to get back in line.
Yeah, supposedly the Palestinians, what they're going to try to do is rebrand,
right,
and call it a welfare program.
Right.
It's just funnel it back into a general welfare program, so people deceased, the earners deceased. But that's again, that doesn't stop the program, right, and it doesn't stop the issue. We shouldn't be fooled by that. We already know that's the idea. We know that's what the Biden administration is going to try to sell Congress on. Yeah. Is that, they've stopped it, but we know that how they're going to keep their program to their people and is through calling it welfare.
But we saw it on the streets of Jerusalem. Andy and I experienced it firsthand. Andy set the stage for that. I think it's important. Folks, share this with your friends right now if you're on Facebook or on any of our social media platforms, because we're going to give you an experience that is the real thing. We were there in Jerusalem and heard things, and we said, this doesn't sound good coming from little kids.
We were walking in the old city of Jerusalem, and there was a little group of 5-year-old, 6-year-old children, about 15 or 16 of them, and they were walking with their teacher in a line through the old city, and they were singing something in Arabic or chanting something in Arabic. And I asked our guide, what are these children being taught to sing? What kind of chant is this? What kind of repartee is this that they're engaging in? And he says they're saying the following: with spirit and with blood, we will take Palestine back. This is the indoctrination of a 5- and 6-year-old child. How is a child like that going to change their attitude toward Israel, toward Jewish people, toward people who are not Palestinian Arabs, when you're indoctrinating them from that age with that kind of mentality?